Welcome back to the interview. I'm Gene Marrano. Our guest is David Mickenberg, the Executive Director of the Taubman Museum of Art. And David, how important is it that we were talking about getting people into the museum? How important is it? This is something I've heard from Roanokeers, that they've been once, I don't have to go back. I mean, how important is it to keep the art fresh, to have rotating exhibits, you know, maybe some notable exhibits from out of town? How important is that?
It's real important. Traditionally, across America, people don't come to museums for the permanent collection. They come for temporary exhibitions. And the design of the Taubman is sort of interesting, but that middle section is so big on the second floor that unless there's, well, no, the permanent collection, the galleries are all configured around this huge corridor.
Right.
That has a light system that is meant by the architect to reflect the Roanoke River. But that space is so big that unless there's artwork in that space, the museum looks empty, even though there are 11 galleries that are full of art. And so I think that there are some changes which are coming at the Taubman that are based on several philosophical differences. One is we're viewing the permanent collection now as a series of rotating temporary exhibitions, so that every 5 months when you come into the museum, the permanent collection will change.
Because there's quite a bit of the permanent collection that is in storage somewhere, correct?
There's a lot of the permanent collection that's in storage, but there's a lot of the permanent collection that can't come out that often, because as is true with most museums, a majority of the permanent collection is works of art on paper. Works of art on paper, because of light levels, can't come out for more than 3 to 4 months every 2 years. So the galleries devoted to paintings will be changing, and they're going to be changing because we're adding different media. One is that folk art is no longer considered sort of a form of American art that's outside of the mainstream. We're moving it inside the mainstream. We're moving the galleries that have mostly paintings from 1860 to 1910. There's going to be folk art in those galleries. There are going to be other traditions, ceramic traditions in the galleries, quilting traditions in the galleries, that are going to look at American art from a variety of vantage points. So when people come in, the permanent collections will change. The temporary exhibition galleries will change every 4 months. As well, and there'll be art in the corridor going down the galleries, uniting them, so that there's more exhibitions, more changing exhibitions, more changing of the permanent collections. There'll be more justification for people to come back. I think the comments we heard from the community were well deserved and well heard.
One of the things you talked about also, David, was working more closely with the community, local artists, art organizations, and the public at large. And how is that happening, and why is it important?
Well, it's important because the museum needs to work with all constituencies, and the museum is not just a museum, it's an art center, and it's a community-based collaborative art center. And as such, our creative community are some of the most important people we have in our community. And so it's happening, there's sort of a new relationship with, I think, regional artists. We're opening up the museum school on April 4th. There'll be a series of classes and 2 sessions which you can take at the museum: life drawing, painting, collage, digital photography, are coming together in a really unique environment inside the museum. It'll be on Monday nights for 3 hours, from 6 to 9 o'clock. At the interim period, at about 1.5 hours, all the classes are coming together for a discussion about art and what they're doing and how they're doing it and why. I think it's going to be phenomenal. All of the teachers come out of the community, and they are some of the very best artists that we have.
One of the things you mentioned also, you're hiring adjunct curators. These are local artists that will curate specific shows.
Actually, there's only one who's actually a local artist, 2 who would call themselves artists. The rest are local scholars who have a specialty in particular areas of the museum's strategic direction. So Brian Civiking is an adjunct curator of folk art. Ray Cass, who has lived in this community as an iconic figure in terms of modernism and the Mountain Lake Workshop and teaching at Virginia Tech, and an artist in his own right, is a curator of Southeast Contemporary American and is in charge of the contemporary galleries. Then you have 2 adjunct curators of community engagement who are doing educational programs that engage the community. The first of which was this past weekend on Oscar Michaud, which was sold out at 157 people coming. It's a great event. Brian Cunahan is one of the artists who's working with us on educational programming and community engagement. And then Leah Stoddard, as an adjunct curator of contemporary who lives in Charlottesville, is one of, I think, the great scholars in the area. So the museum is becoming a hub of a lot of activity by many people who live here that looks at art in various manifestations.
Just got a couple of minutes left. You've studied modern painting yourself, printmaking, 12th century French architecture, curated shows that traveled the country. How did you develop a passion for art? What nurtured your love of the arts?
Oh, I would say if you go back far enough, it was my mother and another woman at the Brooklyn Museum who took me under her wing when I was about 9 years old.
Brooklyn born, we should say.
Brooklyn born, lived at the Brooklyn Museum every weekend for 20 years. Great place to grow up, great place to look at art, great place to meet people, and great place to be influenced on what kind of a transformative experience art can be for people.
Are you an artist yourself?
I was originally a photographer a long time ago.
Okay.
Thought I was going to be a photographer and then got sort of stolen away my freshman year in college by medieval archaeology and spent the next 8 summers in France as an archaeologist.
Neat. You talked about the need for more transparency, David. What did you mean by that, briefly?
I meant that there's been too much mystery about how the arts, specifically the Taubman, function and how it was built and who built it and under what circumstances and what our financial condition is and what kind of programming that we do and what the criteria are and what the strategic direction is. All of that should be placed before the public and people should know that immediately. They can go on our website and find that out. They can listen to people talk about the strategic direction. They can go on Facebook and hear what other people are saying about that. The budget is published. I mean, I think that as a community-based collaborative museum and art center, the Taubman needs to be as transparent to the community as possible, because inevitably the future of the cultural community here, not just the Taubman, is on community ownership of those institutions.
Okay, and just quickly, optimistic about the future?
Yeah.
Okay.
Tough, yes. Optimistic, yes.
Okay, sounds good. We'll have to leave it there. David Mickenberg.
A pleasure.
From Taubman Museum of Art.
Thanks for doing this.
Thanks for joining us. This is The Interview. I'm Gene Marrano. We'll be right back.